Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Today is Friday, August 26th. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And if you're listening to the audio version of today's episode and you like what you're hearing, then please be sure to go and show some support. First, by following the podcast, which will only take a quick couple of seconds. Literally, just a quick click of the button will be helping me out tremendously. Even if you're not listening to each and every episode, folks, make sure to be getting those downloaded because it really would help the boy out in a very big way. Also, it's 100% for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast, whether that's through Apple Podcasts, Odyssey, Spotify, etc. It's all 100% for free. And if you go and follow the show right now, then you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And if you're not already watching the video version of today's episode, then you got to be sure to go and check out Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, folks, because something I've mentioned many times over the last couple of months, but I'll say it again, moving forward, every episode is going to be posted on YouTube as well. So if you haven't done so already, please take the couple of seconds that it takes to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Again, I really would appreciate all the help that I can get. Be sure to smash the like button on today's video as well for those of you who are tuning into the video version, and go and comment down below as to what you think about Patrick Sharp and Troy Murray splitting the color analyst duties for this upcoming season. Last, be sure to go and ring the bell, turn on those push notifications, and that way you can get notified when the episode gets uploaded to YouTube each and every day. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your first listen here to start off your day. Happy Friday, closing in on the weekend. We're almost there, folks. So close. Hope everyone's Friday is off to a good start thus far. And we got a pretty good show on tap here today because some big news came out yesterday. Of course, I'm talking about the announcement on the new broadcast team that the Blackhawks will roll with for the 2022-2023 season. We obviously already knew that Chris Vosters was going to be the new play-by-play man, stepping in for Pat Foley. Obviously, some big shoes to fill there. But one of the big questions that's been on a lot of Blackhawks fans' minds recently is who's going to replace Eddie Olczyk in the color commentary duties. And, you know, after that sudden departure of his, which has now landed him in Seattle along with his brother Ricky, I still really can't believe that Edzo's not going to be calling games for the Blackhawks anymore. I still don't think it's really set in at this point, and it still is really crazy for me to understand how this happened. Like it definitely was a situation, to me at least, easy to say as an outsider. Of course, I'm not in those business meetings and not having those conversations, but it sure looked like something to me that could have been avoided. I just don't understand how or why the Blackhawks would let Eddie Olczyk's contract expire. And I understand that, you know, Edzo has said that this was fully his decision and he felt like it was time to head in another direction. But I feel like the contract situation was something that irked him. And we've also heard him say that, you know, in order to do business, it needs to be a two-way street. Not quote unquote exactly what he said, but basically it sounded like that he and the Blackhawks weren't seeing eye to eye, or something there just wasn't right all in all. And, you know, again, to me, that situation should have been avoided. The Blackhawks never should have let one of the best broadcasters in all of professional sports hit the open market. It just should have been avoided. But anyways, as unfortunate of a situation as that is, the Blackhawks were, you know, kind of left in this tough position. Both Pat and Eddie not going to be back for this year. But I got to admit, I was really I was very happy to see that Troy Murray and Patrick Sharp are going to be splitting the color analyst duties for this upcoming season. I think that was the absolute right way to go about it. And this was a very pivotal moment for the Blackhawks. I know it's only in the broadcast booth and it's the color commentary duties, but this was still a very big move and a big signal to the fan base, I think, as well, because as I already mentioned, having both Pat and Eddie out of there, that was going to be a tough look for a lot of Blackhawks fans and another reason, I should say, for them not to tune in. But to bring in two guys like Patrick Sharp and Troy Murray, I think they absolutely hit it out of the park with this one. Of course, Sharpie's a three-time Stanley Cup champion for the Blackhawks. He had an incredible NHL career, has dabbled a little bit in broadcasting since hanging up the skates a few years back. And ever since we found out that Eddie Olczyk was not going to be returning to the Blackhawks, Sharpie always seemed kind of like the primary candidate to step into that position. However, the one concern was his ability to take this job on full time, because recently he had just moved his family up to the Northeast. It's a long ways away from Chicago, of course. So there were going to be some concerns about whether or not he'd actually want to take on this job full time. But with that being the case, I'm sure that's, what kind of led to the Blackhawks taking this path of splitting the duties with Sharp and also Troy Murray. And what a valuable addition Troy Murray is going to be. A lot of Blackhawks fans are already familiar with him and what an incredible job he's done on the radio over the last few years. Former Blackhawks legend as well during his playing days. So a lot of fans are already familiar with Troy, but for those of you who aren't, you're going to absolutely fall in love with him. Very wise, very valuable addition, I think, to a young and kind of, I don't want to say inexperienced broadcasting team, but you got Colby Cohen, who's only been doing this for a few years. Chris Vosters is pretty much a rookie. Patrick Sharp, well, he does have a little experience. This is going to be his biggest test. Caley Chelios is someone I'll talk about later in the studio. It's a very young team, and I think adding a veteran like Troy Murray to come in from time to time and provide that experience and be someone that Chris Vosters can lean on, I think it was a very wise decision, and he's been doing this for a long time. Troy Murray's been basically in the booth ever since he left the ice. Back in 1998 was when he first started calling games both on television and the radio. So a seasoned vet, one of the best duos, as I already referenced, with John Weidman over the years. I think this was a very, very wise decision by the Blackhawks to bring each of these guys in for multiple different reasons. All right, folks, coming up in just a minute, I will chat plenty more about the Blackhawks broadcast team for this upcoming season. But real quick, I got to talk to you all about BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and the easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. You get to find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. And you can also find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered head to head. Head over to BetOnline today, or you can also use your mobile device to learn more about the action that's happening right now. Don't miss any of it. Go and check out BetOnline, where the game begins. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Segment 2, carrying over where I left off from segment 1, talking about the Blackhawks broadcast team for the upcoming season. Chris Vosters, as I already mentioned, taking over for the great Pat Foley. Obviously, like I mentioned, some very big shoes to fill, but I really do hope that everyone kind of doesn't compare Vosters to Foley, because that's just unrealistic expectations. And Vosters is still very new on the hockey scene, but I think he has the potential to be a very good play-by-play man down the road. And as time went on and as he got more and more games of experience and also got more familiar with the team and the style of play and what was going on around the team as well, there was definitely some improvements there from Vosters. There was progression. There was clear growth, in my opinion. Now, there are still some things that I think he has to work on, but you can only gain those things with time and more experience actually calling games. So I think Vosters does have good potential to be a solid play-by-play man. But at the same time, with Edzo leaving, I think that put the Blackhawks in a really vulnerable position, not only with Vosters being basically a rookie play-by-play guy, like I said, but also in terms of people actually wanting to watch the broadcast and to actually tune into the games. Because look, the product on the ice very likely isn't going to be very enticing in and of itself. And with Pat and Eddie gone, I mean, like I said, it's just another reason for the average fan to kind of be ticked off and not happy with the organization and ultimately decide to put something else on their television instead of watching the Blackhawks likely lose 60% of their games this season. So that left the Blackhawks in a really tough spot, I thought, and they had to bring in someone, or in this case, multiple people, that would jazz things up, make things enticing for the fans, make them want to watch and listen to what these guys want, what these guys have to say up there. And I think they did just the job by adding both Sharpie and Muzz. For Sharpie, I feel like he's going to be a good guy to keep things light, but also provide some very good knowledge about the game of itself. And, he's been there, done that on every level. He knows what it takes to be successful. Still a little bit connected with the team. Obviously, only Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves are still there from his days with the Blackhawks, but he's been around the team. He still kind of has a sense of the identity and what they're trying to do. So he checks off all those boxes. Obviously, he's a very good-looking guy. A lot of people will enjoy. A lot of people won't mind looking at Patrick Sharp. I'm not afraid to admit it. He's a very good-looking dude. What else can I say? So yes, Sharpie checks off all the boxes in those areas. And then for the games that he isn't there, Troy Murray will come in, and you know exactly what you're going to get with Muzz, because he's just a ball of energy. And after everything that he's been through, he was diagnosed with cancer a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But, he just always provides a spark and is that energy and knows about the game, obviously. That's a whole nother conversation. But it's just going to be awesome to see Troy back in that setting, because I think he's really going to enjoy it, and just how much fun he's going to have being back in that atmosphere, back in that setting with all the beat guys and, being part of the broadcast team, being able to do that. I think he's just going to enjoy that so much. And every time he would pop up for a game or two throughout the course of last season or the last couple of seasons, you could see, how big the smile was on his face, how much he would enjoy it, how much all the people that he was along with were enjoying it too. How much the beat guys enjoyed his presence and everything. So I think that utter joy and the fun side of things, while also being so knowledgeable, like I said, he's been calling games since way back in 1998. He's just really going to enjoy this opportunity, and it's going to be great to see Troy in that role. So he's feeling like he's going to be able to do it, which is awesome to hear as well. It was cool to see him at development camp, cool to see him out and about, and I'm sure he's just super stoked about this chance to be part of the television side of things, been part of the radio for seemingly forever, along with John Weidman. They've been incredible, and now he can bring that experience up there with Chris Vosters, which is something I'm sure that he's going to greatly appreciate, being kind of a new guy up there. So yeah, Sharpie and Muzz, I think that's a great 1-2 punch to come in and try and replace Eddie Olczyk. That's not going to be an easy thing to do. But I think the Blackhawks knew they had to do a really good job at filling this role, and I was really happy to see that Patrick Sharp and Troy Murray are going to be splitting the time. And I think each of them, for different reasons and also for kind of the same reasons as well, are going to be providing some great and valuable insight and also keeping things light and fun for Blackhawks fans as they embark on what is going to be probably a tough journey throughout the 2022-2023 regular season. I also wanted to be sure to mention that we know Colby Cohen will return in a content analyst role, so I'm guessing he'll probably be in between the benches sometimes. He'll probably be there for intermission reports, pre and post game shows. I think he'll be doing a little bit of everything in that sense. And I think that's kind of where exactly Colby needs to be. No offense to Colby, but whenever he was calling games as the color guy, I just felt like he'd get distracted. Like, it would always kind of turn into the Colby and Chris show of them just kind of bantering and making fun of each other back and forth. And they got a little sidetracked from time to time. But whenever Colby was in between the benches, that spot in particular, I thought he was really good at. He knows how the game has to be played, gets a good sense of the feel of the game, is right in between the benches, tells it like it is. I think that's really the spot where he needs to be if he was going to be brought back as part of this broadcast team. So good on the Blackhawks to keep him in that role. He'll also be adding some other things, I'm sure, throughout the year. Like I said, the pre and post game shows, intermission reports. That's where Caley Chelios also is going to be as well. And actually, when Troy Murray does go on and calls games as the color commentator, of course, like I said, he's splitting the job with Patrick Sharp. When he does go and do that, Caley Chelios is going to be the one that fills in for him on the radio along with John Weidman. So kind of like Colby, Caley's going to be having a couple of different jobs throughout the year, but I definitely thought she got better and better as the year went on, and her understanding of the team kind of settled in as the year progressed. So happy that she's sticking around as well. She's still got room to grow, I think, too, in that role. But all in all, I was very happy about the moves the Blackhawks made for their broadcasting team this upcoming season. It was never going to be easy replacing Pat and Eddie, but all in all, I think they did about as good of a job as they could have done given the set of circumstances. All right, there is everything on the Blackhawks broadcast team for the 2022-2023 season. Coming up in just a minute, I still want to be sure to talk about Corey Pronman's latest pipeline rankings across the NHL. All right, welcome back to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Getting into segment 3 now before I go and wrap things up and let you all enjoy your weekends. I wanted to be sure to talk for at least a few minutes here about the Chicago Blackhawks getting ranked 13th in terms of their overall prospect pool, according to Corey Pronman of The Athletic. And I know there are probably a lot of people out there saying 13th. I mean, that's still middle of the pack. That's still pretty much average. Maybe not worth mentioning here on the show. Yeah, I hear that. And also, this is only one person's opinion, even though Corey Pronman is a very respectable source. It's only one opinion on the matter, and the Blackhawks are 13th. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this on the show today, folks, is because there is just clearly progression being made in the right direction in terms of the future of the organization. And for so long, the prospect pool was put on the back burner. It was thrown aside. It was all about trying to win now and trying to keep the roster enticing. And that's what really cost this team overall in recent years. They don't have any, sense of young talent coming up through the organization that can change the direction of the franchise. It was basically just Alex DeBrincat over the recent years and Lucas Reichel, and that's basically it. No one else has been developed. And there weren't really any high hopes until this year's NHL draft, and that's what led the Blackhawks, Kyle Davidson, new GM, into this decision where he felt like he had no choice but to go with a scorched earth rebuild. That was the reason, because the Blackhawks had nothing to bank on in terms of their overall prospect pool. But to finally see this progression up from 22nd last year, according to Corey Pronman, that's a good sign, Blackhawks fans, to finally see this progression. And also one thing that's in the back of my mind, the Blackhawks currently have 2 first-round picks in the upcoming 2023 NHL draft, but with Patrick Kane likely departing at the trade deadline, as sad as it is to say, seems like it's only a matter of time, and seems like that's the sense of reality right now. Jonathan Toews also is in that boat. Not saying that he's going to net a first-round pick, but you never know. It's a very crucial first half for him. There are a couple other pieces on the Blackhawks that could be dealt in the future that could net them 3 or even more first-round picks in the upcoming NHL draft. And in 2024, they have 2 picks once again. So considering that there's this clear progression right now and also knowing that there's more first-round picks to come, it's not crazy to think that the Blackhawks are going to have a top 10 prospect pool in the entire NHL in just a year or two. So good things are to come, Blackhawks fans. Better days are to come. There is finally a little bit of depth in the prospect pool. There's Lucas Reichel. We've added Kevin Korchinski, Frank the Tank. There's also a little bit of depth there finally after having 11 picks in this year's draft. So that should only continue to grow as the years go on and on and on. That's the name of the game for the Blackhawks right now. That's the goal of this entire thing. Since Kyle Davidson has taken over, he said that it's all going to be about building up better through the draft and adding future assets, adding more and more young prospects who can hopefully be pieces of the puzzle someday down the road. That's the name of the game right now for the Chicago Blackhawks. And so far, in my opinion, Davidson has done a very good job of staying true and just overall adding to the prospect pool. He's done a good job in that specific department, I got to say. So it's just really nice to know that the prospect pool is at least starting to head into the right direction after, years and years of being neglected under the previous regime. All right, folks, I think that is going to wrap up Friday, August 26th episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks right now, wherever you get your podcasts, and go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And after the show, you got to be sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast for all the latest news and updates throughout the NHL offseason. It's free and available on all platforms, so be sure to go and check out Locked On NHL right now, wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, thank you for tuning into today's episode. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And for any questions at all regarding anything related to the show or to the Blackhawks, feel free to email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com. You could also hit me up on any one of my Twitter accounts, or you could call 708-653-0572 to leave a voicemail. So until tomorrow's episode, thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.